Well, good morning, everyone. It's nice to see such a good turnout here for the first of a 3-week series on the history of Covenant Church, our own church. And so I've enjoyed sort of exploring the topic and the materials we have. And I always, when I'm reading stuff or studying stuff, I always think, well, if I find this interesting, maybe others will too. And so that's kind of what was behind me engaging with this topic. We've got 3 weeks planned, but just fair warning, there is so much material, and to talk about that this will just be sort of an initial installment. I mean, I'm sure that there will be more to come, ideally next year, but for now, we're looking at the early history of Covenant.
Yeah, I don't know. He's going.
And so I'm calling it Seeking God at Ridgecliff and Reading, sort of our location. A history, not the complete history, but as much as I've come up with so far. So as usual, I've got PowerPoint slides. Additionally, I have, this is kind of also sort of a museum kind of installation right now, because thanks to Jeannie Ossian, we have mounted and nicely hung some selected images from the, and here, speaking of Jeannie, Jeannie did a wonderful job of putting these items up for us, as old as the actual Covenant charter document right there, and then a variety of things that we'll be looking at. And then I have some more things to kind of highlight as we're moving along. And first of which, how about this? The first time I was a deacon, famously, we would always start by calling the deacons' meeting to order. And this is for the joy of serving, December 19, 1972. I suspect this is the deacon gavel. I don't know that for a fact. I was never moderator, so I was never allowed to touch it. But I think this was it. So anyway, yeah, lots to do. And toward the end, I'm going to have a handout to give to everyone with sort of a reading assignment for next time. And so, so we'll probably start next week with a quiz on the readings. So just anyway, all right, let's go. So I mean, I've spent really a couple years now digging through the various heritage materials that we have. And so what I'm in the process of putting together, really, I was surprised by the number of P's in my list, focus on the people of Covenant Presbyterian Church, because, you talk about the buildings and the books and the artifacts, but really, I mean, it's nothing without the people. And then sort of the history of this place, why this place, and of course, pastors and program staff who lead us in so many important ways. I found lots of pictures, again, thanks to the work of previous heritage efforts, heritage committee, people who have grabbed and saved these things so that we can still appreciate and enjoy them. And also, I think, of course, as a church, what have our purposes and priorities been? So just sort of a range of things to look at. So my offering at this point, I would view this really as a status report, essentially, a summary of what I've done with Covenant's heritage materials so far. Because again, there is so much that you kind of almost never run out of things you could be finding, recovering, publicizing, sharing to really just foster a better sense of who we are as a church, where we came from, how we got here, And it's really easy to not have that sense, if we don't pay a little bit of attention to it. And first of all, none of this would be possible without the work done by Covenant's Heritage Committee that was led by Dick Sharp and the Tannehills. Betsy here with us today, so thank you, Betsy. So what I'm focusing on for us today is some selected early documents, photos, and artifacts. I'm going to talk a little bit, this might seem a little weird, about the actual name, Covenant Presbyterian Church, so stay tuned on that. And most of today will be sort of the very beginnings of Covenant. I mean, spoiler, we won't really even be talking about this building very much, that early. So these 3 weeks, it's fair to say, as it turns out, are going to focus mostly on those earlier decades, roughly 1952 to 1973, and then stay tuned for more later. And to share, I'll just go ahead and share. I've got some other artifacts up here. The reason for the 1973 in particular, early on in working with the heritage materials, I came across this volume from 1973, Covenant Presbyterian Church, A History by Drew Arnold, compiled in 1973. And when I started working with the heritage materials, I got into it, and it's there's kind of some loose stuff you have to be careful with, and it's sort of original letters and little notes and just all kinds of stuff. Essentially a scrapbook. Just as stuff came in, it's like he just stick it in there. And crucially also, Drew composed a summary year by year of kind of what happened, this year at Covenant. So for every year, there's a nice summary there. So having this document really drove, most of what I've done so far. And part of the issue is that this is fairly fragile at this point. It's the original piece, and it's just sort of spiraled down this way. And so one day in early 2023, I stood at the photocopier and I carefully disassembled this and page by page photocopied the whole thing. And so if you go in the heritage room, over in the office suite, which I encourage you to do, this is the photocopy of the entire Drew Arnold thing, and this is a lot friendlier to work with. And so anyway, those right there are the most important aspect of the work I've done so far, because it was such a nicely packaged, well-documented, thorough treatment year by year of what was going on. So let's see. Again, we have the historical artifacts to share along with these textual materials, and yeah, pretty well covered that. Well, on the topic of artifacts, just here is a little keychain, key fob, whatever. Covenant, keys of the kingdom. I don't have a date on that. I don't know. So there you have it. All right. So let's look at the very earliest stages of what we think of as our church. So our name was chosen really at the founding of the church in 1953 After some months of a sort of a early generic name that was being used during the planning stages, which is Northwest Presbyterian Church, meaning a Presbyterian church in Northwest Columbus. And this was kind of neat. This photo I found among the materials, and if we can read that, a Presbyterian church will be built on this site. And that site is this site. Dave, I think, isn't it right down, kind of down towards the corner with Reading?
Reading and Richcliffe.
Reading and Richcliffe. Yeah. So
Presbyterian bought 10 lots. This had already been platted. Between everything between Reading and Sciotangi. From Richcliffe north for 10 lots.
Right.
We got all except one, and that's what affected our master plan.
Right.
The fact we didn't have that one.
Exactly. So I don't know if you all heard, but basically 10 lots of Upper Arlington, a rectangle, 10 lots were acquired except for one holdout that I think was over here on Reading.
Had a house.
Kind of where the parking lot is now.
Had a little house on there.
And I think you said also that because of that holdout, that house is partly why the sanctuary's here, whereas you might have rather had it on Reading.
If it hadn't been that way, the front of the church, the entrance and so forth, would be at the intersection of Reading and Richcliffe, which would have made it far more prominent.
Yes.
But because of that,
exactly,
which affected our expansion north, we had to turn it opposite hand.
Exactly. Sure. So anyway, so interesting how these early twists in history and just the way things work out can have long-lasting effects.
There were no other houses in the area when we were.
That's the impression I had. No other houses around, and so very good. Hey, question?
Was that house the same one that was the manse that was?
Yes. Yes. People named Dahl owned it, and then we finally got it. We knew we were going to get it. That's the reason why. Well, this gets into the Christian education wing, which the story of that. But we couldn't carry it on further north than we wanted to because of that house. But we finally got it. So then we used it as, we had 3 pastors at that time, and our number 3 pastor used it as a manse.
And I'm pretty sure I have a photo of that manse in the presentation. Hold that thought. So anyway, so here is an original sign where there is not yet any name there. However, in January 1954, Covenant replaced the original sign with one of their own to announce the coming of a new church to serve the area. And sure enough, Covenant Presbyterian Church. And looking left to right there, Don Shaw, Thomas Lightfoot, Wilbur Walters, and Jim Bolton. So, now this might be a little bit of a diversion, but I hope you'll bear with me. I kind of got to wondering about the very name Covenant Presbyterian Church, and it's kind of like personal, I guess, but but bear with me. So Mona and I moved here in 1988, and Dick Sharp hired me at Chemical Abstracts, by the way, little Covenant trivia, so thanks to Dick, it worked out. But so Mona and I, it was Christmas time or whatever, and I think we were thinking, well, we should figure out a church to go try out, and we got married in a Presbyterian church, so we came down, and in fact, our church in Idaho where we got married was called Covenant Presbyterian Church. So imagine our surprise when we came down and well, here's Covenant Presbyterian Church. And it was December 1988,
Still
and-
15 towels, right?
and we kind of got right in with the choir and, well done and stuff, and so that was pretty cool. And so it just seemed like, divine inspiration, or that we got married at Covenant Presbyterian Church, and here we are at Covenant Presbyterian Church. Moreover, in the early 2000s, Mona's grandmother moved to Austin, Texas, and near her condo in Austin was a Covenant Presbyterian Church. So, I just, as I was working through this material, I kind of just got to wondering, like, how many Covenant Presbyterian churches are there? And so I did, armed with Google, I did a little research. So I can share with you churches named Covenant Presbyterian by state. The largest is that there are 10 in Texas. And you see my elaborate Google search strategy there. Texas Covenant Presbyterian Church, etc. So there are 9 in California, 8 in North Carolina, 7 in Ohio, also 7 in Pennsylvania and Georgia and Florida. And the ones in Ohio, the closest one seems to be Covenant Presbyterian in Springfield, Ohio, which is a pretty nice looking place. Vandalia, Springboro, Steubenville, Wellsville, Warren. And then, so I just kind of carried on with this. And what I came up with is, 6 in Alabama, 5 in Tennessee, South Carolina, 4 in Arkansas. You just kind of work through, and you can actually see some footnotes there with some of the, like 15 states where there's 1, and 9 states where there are none at all. And you see there the one in Idaho. So that's my little personal touch there. Yeah, Dave.
Well, we had to pick a name that another church in our presbytery didn't already have.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, Springfield Covenant is in Miami Presbytery. So that's the closest one, but that's
Yeah, it makes sense.
how we were able to use that name here, because we had no others in this presbytery.
Interesting. Yeah, it makes sense. Did everyone hear that? That you couldn't have 2 covenants in one presbytery. Once, and so anyway, yeah. So we got covenant, the name covenant, for this presbytery, and of course Springfield isn't far away, but it is in a different presbytery. So anyway, and internationally, I did not come up with any in Canada or Great Britain. There is, however, one in Auckland, New Zealand. So there you have it. So so the total is 121 by my higher math. And with most of them, the largest numbers being California, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and then kind of the Confederacy. Roughly. For whatever, maybe that means something, maybe it means nothing, but just demographically, that's where we're talking about. So, I guess it made me sort of pause to think of, well, what do we mean by, the term covenant? A solemn agreement between the members of a Christian church to act together in harmony with the precepts of the gospel. And that, that the notion of covenant, the biblical notion, that seems to conform to us nicely, I would say. So our name then was chosen at the founding in 1953.
There was a Covenant Baptist church here in Upper Arlington.
I think I've seen that. Well, and as a matter of fact,
It's on Durford Road.
yeah, right. Well, and there's another little twist here that I didn't know much about. Check this out. There is also a denomination called Covenant Presbyterian Church. And it is not an assemblage of churches that are all called Covenant. I mean, if you look on their website, but it is a Protestant Reformed founded in 2006 that split from the Reformed Presbyterian Church General Assembly, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, it's easy to find on this, this website, but there's something like 20 churches, and there's sort of an appendix where you can click, and it's, I mean, I think it tends to be kind of in the South, Texas, or, I mean, just sort of around in a way that, I don't know. And the website is covenant-presbyterian.org, so the dash is important, I guess. So, I mean, so Covenant is not exactly unique, but it's a pretty popular and compelling name for a church. So we're in good company, I guess you could say. And I did not count these folks in my 121, by the way. So that's that. So let's get back now to our church and Upper Arlington. Let's see. So in the early 1950s, and by the way, a few of these snippets came from a previous display that had been done at Covenant about the church, and so I'm sort of shamelessly, borrowing from that. But I mean, it was very nice, sort of ground laying work, for our understanding together. In the early 1950s, plans were made to build 3 new Presbyterian churches in Columbus. 2 of the new churches, Brookwood and Eastminster, were built first. By early 1953, the National Missions Committee of the Columbus Presbytery had purchased land at the corner of, you guessed it, Ridgecliff and Reading Roads, on which the Northwest Church was to be built. On Sunday, September 27, 1953, 15 people participated in the first worship service of the Northwest Presbyterian Church at the Lane Avenue Theater. The first congregational meetings were held on December 6th and 13th, 1953, and at these meetings, elders and deacons were elected, and the name of the new church, Covenant Presbyterian, was chosen. The church was chartered on January 31st, 1954 at Northminster Presbyterian Church. And I think it's
because of Andy Blackwood.
Yeah, that's what we have here, the charter. So if you want to have a close-up look at that. And you see the letter there on the right about the first service. And the terminology was a little unusual for me. The new Presbyterian church to be built in Sciotangi Village will be held. So Dave, I'm assuming this part of Upper Arlington was termed Sciotangi Village.
Yeah, it was annexed later.
Yeah, okay, yep. Okay.
It's all part of this bridge.
Mm-hmm, yep. And so, similarly, I wanted to expand my view a little bit and think about beyond our church for the community at large. It got me thinking, I mean, and I never really thought about it, and I thought, well, I wonder what I'll find. So it got me thinking about, well, when were the other churches started and built in Upper Arlington around us? So here you've got a very sophisticated screen capture from Google Maps. And a Covenant right at the center. And I think you recognize, there's Kingsdale over there to the right, and you see the golf course. On the right-hand side, you see 315. On the left side, you see Scioto River. And so, there's roughly 10, major churches, within the zone there. And so, and again, I'll appreciate any correction or additional information you can supply, but this is looking like at the Upper Arlington historical, websites, stuff like that. So it looks to me like it's actually not that remarkable a story. Covenant was basically part of a wave of post-World War II church building in Upper Arlington. I mean, but it was interesting how many were built really in a rapid timeline, basically after World War II. And there was probably a lot of that, you know, across the whole country. So UA was incorporated as a village in 1918, as a city in 1941, and as I understand it, and if any of you are more knowledgeable, do correct me, it seems that the oldest church in the area, meaning what was going to be UA, was a stone chapel at Lane Avenue and Riverside Drive, I think near the golf course, the Scioto Country Club, built in 1849, but destroyed by fire. And the church, the remnants, the people of that church, as I understand it then, basically built Riverside Methodist on Zollinger in 1917. And I've driven by that church a lot. It's very, it looks like, you know, something, you know, that age. It's a really neat building. And so then, just looking at the other churches, and mostly this is just by not only the Upper Arlington resource, but looking at the websites of those churches. St. Agatha's Catholic was founded in 1938, Holy Trinity Lutheran 1950, St. Mark's Episcopal 1952, Covenant, we're talking about 1953, and then in 55 to 57 are all of basically the rest. St. Andrew's, UA Lutheran, Mount View, Northwest Christian. And so essentially in you know, about a decade or so, the major churches of Upper Arlington were established. So, and Covenant was basically right in the wave of that. And we, as it turns out geographically, we ended up with sort of a very central location. Yeah, Dave.
Upper Arlington, in its founding in 1918, had no provision for church zoning. Everybody in Upper Arlington went to First Community Church. It was in Marble Cliff, so they saw no need for another church in Upper Arlington. St. Agatha was, before it was annexed to Upper Arlington. The first one that ran afoul of that zoning problem was Holy Trinity Lutheran, and they had to go to court.
Oh my gosh.
To get Upper Arlington
Really?
to back off of their prohibition of churches. And the First Community Church people felt that was an incursion on their hegemony. So we followed on the coattails of Upper Arlington, Holy Trinity Lutheran, in getting, when this was annexed.
Right,
And the zoning, you know.
Sure. Yeah, so early Upper Arlington didn't have provision for zoning for churches. And so, yeah, so.
Everybody went to First Community.
Yeah, so there was First Community.
Heaven help those that didn't.
And then Holy Trinity managed to get themselves legal, I guess.
They took a court action.
And yeah, it took a court action. That's great, thanks, Dave. So, all right. Okay, so the very first services. So as you know, the internet has many things like old photos and such. And so I found two photos of the Lane Avenue Theater. And
look at those cars.
I guess it looks like that they're showing a movie called Behave Yourself, or maybe that was a Covenant sermon, I don't know. And over here we've got a movie called Teresa. So worship services were held here from September 27, 1953 until July 31st, 1955. So, you know, going on 2 years. The nearby Upper Arlington Town Hall was used for church school. The theater was located near the west end of the current Lane Avenue Shopping Center. And the town hall was located on the second floor of a separate building on the other side of Chester Lane. So there you go. And so that's our first church home. Yeah, John.
I can remember walking up there, 25 cents to see Mighty Mouse and so forth.
25 cents.
And sitting in the service about 13 rows back in the same seat for the service. And 12 years old.
Well, and you probably could go to church for free, right? You had to pay for the movie, but.
Yeah. After the movie theater went out, which was after we used it, it was taken over as a super duper grocery store, which was interesting because it had a sloping floor, as the movie theaters had to.
Yep.
And so did the grocery store, which meant you couldn't let loose of your gun in the place.
So that was where Super Duper.
Yeah, super duper took that
In
over.
the middle of the lane.
So did you when you were shopping, did you work your way downhill and have to push up to check
Yeah.
out?
But your grocery cart was gonna go away from you.
I would think psychologically it'd be good if you could have the checkout at the bottom because you're gonna load up. Like, you know. These and other theological questions occupy us still. So, okay. This is kind of cool. This is the worship bulletin for the very first service, September 27, 1953. And well, I mean, prelude, hymn, scripture, anthem, sermon by the Reverend Eugene Stone. And so, Dave, do you know about Eugene Stone?
No, I was
Okay.
not here. I was still in Korea at this
Yeah,
time.
okay, yeah. I mean, I think I've read that, I mean, he was someone just in the area who was available and.
I'm in one of the Presbyterian ministers, but I did not
Sure,
know.
sure. And I wanted to highlight this kind of precious paragraph over here that I'm not sure who wrote this text here for this first bulletin, but lest you be over-worried by the uninspiring name of Northwest Church, to be assured that Presbytery quite intentionally selected an uninspiring name that would serve as a temporary title until you, the people of the congregation, have decided what you wish your church to be called. So our church, our congregation, was given that task and arrived at Covenant Presbyterian Church. So, you know, anyway, but I like the uninspiring name. So our name now is, you know, certainly not uninspiring, I don't think.
One of the three that were started in at this time, Brookwood,
Yes.
did not make it. It has been demolished and replaced with a retirement facility. So
Eastminster's
they were
not
on the
too.
same course we were.
And the other one?
Eastminster I think, is
Eastminster
also-
is still there.
Yeah, but I don't think they're worshiping as Presbyterians anymore.
They're not?
I don't think so. We've had several members join from Eastminster Covenant in the last couple of years.
And we alone have endured.
Right.
Not just endured. We've done more, we've done more than just endure. I would argue we're
Prospered.
oh yeah, exactly.
Down to everything.
Okay.
Not in America.
Here is the first worship service attendees. Still, we don't have the name Covenant, but there's the list. Let's see, how many of you are here today? I guess that number is 0.
Sure knew those people.
Sure.
Sure knew those people.
And I mentioned the Drew Arnold history of Covenant that I used so much. He was there, and his wife Marjorie, and I knew Drew. I mean, we came in the late '80s. He was still around. I mean,
Drew's father was our longtime office manager for our company.
Oh,
He was almost a member of our family. We all called him Uncle Vic. But we watched Drew grow up and go to medical school.
right,
And
very good. So, let's see, I've got a couple more. Here's some first worship leaders. These are actually images from Lane Avenue Theater still, but not the greatest quality, but we see the officials who conducted the first service of the church, left to right, Clark Eberly, Jim Bolton, Wilbur Walters, Mrs. Melvin Howell, pianist, Mrs. James C. Bolton. We still have that. I mean, I think for us today, it's a little annoying to have, you know, like Mona isn't really Mrs. David. But, that sort of, these women had names, but we don't always, we don't always get them. Yeah. Betsy?
Excuse me, one of my projects is to go through this document and identify all the women by their first names, because I think that's really important. I'll have to talk to Dave, because you probably know a lot of them. Some of them I know,
Yeah.
but a lot of them I don't.
Great, yeah, definitely. I don't know if you all heard that with Betsy, just talking about going through these early documents to try to supply the actual first names of women. Betsy also possibly, you think the 1971 church directory, that might have the first names of everybody, just as a resource, and I have that, I mean, so.
Yeah, I
You might have one too, yeah. So, all right, let's see, on the right, that was the congregation at that initial meeting. And it's noted at, and again, this idea, it's one of 3 new Presbyterian churches to be organized since the war. And then at this juncture, it is known that the future location of the church will be at Reading and Ridgecliffe. So, all right. But Ridgecliffe spelled a little different, I think, than what we do now. But never mind. Covenant's second home, temporary home, was at UA Tremont School, which, there, and
it was brand new then.
yeah. And so the church met at Tremont School, as I understand it, from August 7, 1955 to May 27, 1956. So, sort of shy of a year, but again, sort of that time of transition before the church building is completed. It was recorded that it took almost every able-bodied man in the church to render the gymnasium, auditorium, and locker rooms usable for services and church school classes. And then, at the close of the service on May 27, 1956, the congregation proceeded to covenant for the service of the opening of the chapel doors. So then the first worship service held on this property was Sunday, June 3rd, 1956. So there you have that. And so I think maybe that's enough for today. And meanwhile, however, I would encourage you to have a look at the items on the wall. We have some initial renderings and sort of floor plans for the church as it was being built. We'll talk more about those next week. Have a look. And last thing, however, will be the homework. So I mentioned mostly based, not solely, but mostly based on the Drew Arnold history. It made sense to me to try to sort of like compile like the history of Covenant Church, but I mean, how on earth to, like approach a project like that? So what I've done, using the Drew Arnold history as well as other sources, I've compiled what I call a historical timeline of Covenant. And it's basically year by year, month by month, as I am able to learn about and then add to the document. So reading it start to finish, you do get sort of the historical, what's going on. And there are certain things that are the same that I report every year, like for example, the church membership, like the end of the year. And I believe it was 1971 that was our highest membership year. Does that sound right, Dave? About 2,000.
69 to
Was
70.
it was, yeah, right in there. So it's in here. So this is pretty complete, but on the other hand, it's a document that I still maintain on my computer. So as I learn more stuff, or as anybody corrects things and whatnot, I will update it. So future versions will, presumably be forthcoming that are augmented. This one is dated October 22, so that's where things stood. So why don't you all take one, one each or one per family, depending on your commitment level, And next week, we may start with a quiz. So, just say it. I might be running a little shy on these.
David, may I make a comment?
Yeah. Sure.
Just talk to my sister.
Yeah.
Who was in Cincinnati.
Yeah, hey, everyone. Everyone, hang on.
Several
Jack? Yeah.
Several of us, my wife and I, and Sheila Seifert, and Judy Yoder, all went to Pleasant Ridge Presbyterian Church in Cincinnati. That church just celebrated their 330th year.
Oh my God.
But the way it looks, they may not last more than a few more years, probably will be totally gone within 5 years.
What was the name of that church again?
Pleasant Ridge Presbyterian Church.
Pleasant Ridge Presbyterian Church.
And here's the big thing,
Interesting.
George Washington's bodyguard was buried in the cemetery.
George Washington's bodyguard was buried in the cemetery. We cannot make
Including my
any,
relatives too.
we can't make any claim like that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, anyway, well, thanks.
And how did we all end up together? That's the problem. Never.
So,
How many of you came from there?
so, did everybody? Well, thanks everybody, and come back next week to see how the story continues.
Thanks, Dave.